Welcome to the Beat Reporter's Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. I'm Bryan Hoch, MLB.com's Yankees beat reporter, joined here by Jesse, who will be asking the questions. Jesse, what do we have first?
Sure. So Adam says, what's your take on Boone as a manager? First couple of weeks looked like he was a little timid with some questionable decisions. Now he looks great, confident, owns the clubhouse. What's your take?
My take is that I thought Aaron Boone was going to be a good manager because he's got great players. And I thought that despite not having any prior managerial or coaching experience, he had the right temperament to take over the job. I think that he's got a real pulse of the dugout. He's a player's manager. I remember talking to CC Sabathia in spring training, and he was saying how he hopes that the players in that room would get to know Aaron Boone the way that he does. They played together for a brief period with the Cleveland Indians, and just a real kind of approachable presence in that room, and I think a real baseball mind too. I think that's come through as well. Obviously, he comes from a rich baseball family with the bloodlines. His grandfather played in the big leagues, so did his father, and he had a long career too. I'm sure you all remember that home run he hit to defeat the Red Sox in 2003. So I really think he's almost made a seamless transition here. There's been a few bumps in the road, but nothing that was unexpected, and I think he's done a really good job so far.
Great. This next question is from Ann. Can Gary Sanchez break out of his slump?
Can he? I think he can. I think that tonight would be a good time to start. I sense some frustration with Sanchez so far. I think that there's been a lot of questions in his mind. He may be pressing here, wondering why the numbers haven't translated, and we haven't really seen that from Gary Sanchez at the big league level. He came up in 2016, really dominated from the get-go. 2017, a very solid year. You look at his numbers, despite missing most of April, he was able to put up some really impressive power numbers for a catcher. So I think that talent didn't evaporate overnight. Boone has talked about Sanchez kind of being beat up a little bit. That's part of why he sat him for 2 games here, back-to-back days. He's back in the lineup tonight. I think that if he's truly not injured, if he's healthy, he can go out there and put up big numbers, and I think that's still in there for Gary Sanchez.
Awesome. This next question is from Tony. What are the chances that Clint Frazier is in the Yankees organization on August 1st?
It might be about 50-50. I think that the thing with Clint Frazier is there's such a world of talent there. There's a lot of appeal for the Yankees to bring him up, but there's no vacancy here. I don't see him coming up and starting over Brett Gardner, Aaron Hicks, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, those are 4 pretty big names right there. They're pretty dead set on that Hicks is going to be on this roster and playing center field. So I don't really see an opening unless somebody gets hurt. As appealing as he is, I think that he's appealing to other teams as well, and with the Yankees searching for starting pitching, I think that those discussions are probably going to include Clint Frazier. There's no urgency to trade him, but there's also no way to promote him and get him playing in the lineup every day up here, and they don't want him sitting on the bench. So I'll flip a coin and say it's 50-50 at this point for Clint.
Cool. This next question is from Andrew. Besides the obvious need of SP, what other position do you think the Yankees may target at the deadline?
I think starting pitching is the number one, and you mentioned that. But I think that you can always use some bullpen help. This bullpen should be a strength of this team, and I think you've seen it really step up lately. Dellin Betances has picked his game up to another level. So this really should be a strength of this team. Tommy Kahnle could come back at some point. I think that if they're a whole unit, the bullpen is probably a secondary concern to the rotation, because that is number one right now for this team. They've got Domingo Germán in the rotation. Jonathan Loaizaga, will be making his major league debut tomorrow, but he's more of a placeholder. They're waiting for Masahiro Tanaka to get back, and if they can add another arm to that rotation, they're really going to look to do that.
So Steven says, what are the chances Justice Sheffield is the starting rotation next season coming out of spring training?
I could see that. I could definitely see that. They promoted him to Scranton, and they're still working on some things with Sheffield, especially with fastball command, but the goods are there. This kid is going to pitch in the big leagues, and he could have a very long career if he sticks around. So just watching him pitch a little bit this spring, I was very impressed with Sheffield. I think that he's still ironing out some of the kinks down there at AAA, and he's so young, but I think that he's probably going to make his major league debut at some point this year, maybe September, maybe earlier than that. I think he's going to be in the mix for a rotation spot next spring for sure.
Next question's from Jose. Now that ANDUJAR and TORRES are succeeding, Can we officially end any and all Manny Machado speculation?
I never say never with this team. You know, I think that last offseason, if you came to me around November and said, are the Yankees going to trade for Giancarlo Stanton, I would have said no way. And here he is in the lineup. You know, they didn't necessarily need a power-hitting right fielder, but when Stanton kind of fell into their laps, they went out and got one anyway. And so you have Stanton and Judge. So I think that Machado, Bryce Harper, these names are going to be circulated around the Yankees. Whether or not they get both or one of them, I guess that remains to be seen. But I never say never with this team. I mean, they've got the financial resources to go get that. And if it makes sense for some reason, who knows? Maybe they trade ANDUJAR and go get a starting pitcher. I think that's possible, too. And you create a vacancy that way. So I'm not ready to say no on Manny Machado, but it does look less likely than it probably did a year ago.
Mike says, will the Yankees consider a new 1B at some point this season? And if so, do they stay in the organization or go outside?
You know, I think that this team is very high on Greg Bird. They remain very high on Greg Bird. They've waited a long time for him to come back and be that kind of left-handed presence in the heart of their lineup. You saw a glimpse of what he could do last year in the postseason down the stretch. Missed most of the year, but had some really big hits in the postseason and hit a home run last night, too. So I think that they're going to stick with Greg Bird at first base. I think that Brandon Drury is down there at AAA. He could be an option at some point. They've got him working out at first base to increase his versatility. Tyler Austin in the lineup tonight as a DH. He could get some reps there, but Brian Cashman has really stuck with Greg Bird so far over the last 3 years. They're committed to seeing this through with Greg Bird, and I think he's going to get the majority of the reps at first base the rest of the year.
Okay, this next question is from Jackson. Will Sonny Gray find his groove and be more consistent?
Yeah, I think that's $1 million question for the Yankees. I mean, they were encouraged by what he had done recently, kind of took a step backwards last night. But although, you know, that fly ball that was hit down the left field line by Soto, I think that was kind of a fluky thing there. On the whole, you have to look at Sonny Gray's home road splits, and he's just been hurt by the home run ball here at Yankee Stadium. But that one, you almost want to write it off as kind of a fluky home run there. I think that he's really in his own head a lot. I think that, talking about his tempo, he keeps talking about wanting to be convicted when he throws his pitches. I think that there's a mental adjustment that's going on here to New York. It's not just a physical thing because he's got the stuff. We saw it in Oakland. We saw it last year when the Yankees traded for him at the deadline. This guy was a difference maker for the A's. He came over and he pitched okay down the stretch with the exception of a couple starts. But this year it's been a whole lot of up and down roller coaster for Sonny Gray. And what they really need in this rotation here, if you're going into a short series in the postseason, you want to have a guy that you can slot behind Luis Severino and really feel good about a 1-2 that you can go up against, say, the Houston Astros and have Verlander and Garrett Cole back-to-back. You want your version of that. And so whether or not that can be Sonny Gray, I'm not sure. The Yankees would love for it to be so, but otherwise they're going to have to go out and trade for somebody like that.
This next question's from Marissa. How do you see the AL East division shaping out?
I think it's going to be a battle to the finish. I mean, it's going to be a dogfight. We've seen the Yankees and the Red Sox kind of jockeying for position, and I really expect we're going to look up at the end of September, and those two teams are going to be separated by 1 or 2 games. I mean, I think this is going to come down to the finish. These teams are both very young, very talented, very hungry, and neither one of them wants to play in that American League wildcard game. You saw how important home field advantage was for the Yankees last year. They didn't have it. They didn't win a game. They didn't lose a game here at Yankee Stadium, and if they had home field advantage for that ALCS, maybe it's a different story. Maybe they're the ones going to Los Angeles for the World Series instead of the Astros. So it is crucially important for the Yankees. I think that both teams obviously want to win this division, and I think they're going to pull out all the stops to do it. It makes for great theater, and it's great for baseball, too.
Okay, this last question's from Tim. Will the Yankees trade for J.A. Happ or Cole Hamels?
I'm interested in Happ. I think that Hamels could be more likely. I think that the Rangers are going to be motivated sellers there. They're willing to pick up some of the salary. But I think that Happ might actually wind up being a better fit for this team. I think that Brian Cashman is probably somewhere around this ballpark right now with a cell phone pressed to his ear, pursuing any and all leads. These things typically kick up once the June draft is over and teams have a better idea of if they're contenders or pretenders. And I think in both those cases, particularly in Texas's case, but Toronto for sure, I think that these are pieces that could be moved. And I think one or both those pitchers is going to have a new uniform come July 31st. Sure, I think that I could see either one of them being in pinstripes, but I'm intrigued by Happ. I think he'd be a really nice fit here.
And one more question from Nate. Do you see the Yankees moving Brandon Drury?
I think that he's available. You know, this is a guy who has said he doesn't belong in AAA, and I think his performance has shown that. It's just unfortunate. I mean, this is a guy who was the Yankees opening day third baseman, and through no fault of his own, you know, he had dizziness and migraines and a long rehab process. And while he was gone, Miguel ANDUJAR just came up and tore the cover off the ball. So I think that Brandon Drury doesn't want to be a bench player, and right now there's no opportunity here at the big league level. So the way Cashman always talks about it is those players down in the minor leagues they're there to help the major league team if necessary, but they're also chips to help trade for what the major league team needs. And I think that he falls into both those categories right now, but he wants to be a starting player, and if he's going to do that, I think his best chance to do that is elsewhere. So as of right now, I think that the other 29 teams are probably interested in Brandon Drury. I think that anybody who has a need in the infield, maybe in the outfield, could come calling to the Yankees at some point. All right, well, that does it for us. Thanks for watching the Beat Reporters Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. Tune in again next time. From Yankee Stadium, I'm Bryan Hoch.